Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Tuesday night with 4C Comics. I appear to be on here completely by myself, which is insane because there's other people who are going to be on tonight. Ken's going to be on for a little while, and then he has some business to attend to. So tonight we got just a great interview. We've got Mr. Jim Shooter who's here with us, and he's going to be telling us stories. We're going to bring up some stuff to talk about. We're going to spin the wheel of comics over here and just pick a guy, and he's going to talk about him. We're going to take comments from you guys, and I'm also going to be joined by Becker. So without any further ado, let's see if we can get the ball rolling. Hey, Emilio, what's going on? Nerd from Brooklyn, what's up? And Ken's going to be, he's doing multiple things here, so it might take him a second. He's going to leave me on the spot here and keep me talking, though, so we'll have to see how long I can just talk. But he's there. You can hear them all in the background. They're around.
Hey, everybody.
Becker's out there.
I'm here.
And Jim's here. I don't know why I can only see myself. Can you guys see everybody?
No,
we can't see each other.
But I can hear you. It's like voices in my head. This is probably the most crazy start we've had.
we got a great, big, beautiful close up of you. It's great.
Yeah, I know. I don't think anybody ever. I'm going to move back because I'm not comfortable seeing that much of myself. But
oh, come on, Jeff.
Yeah.
Don't be so modest.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like there we go. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. Everybody, welcome Beckerman. Welcome Jim.
Oh, that's
Ken's getting
better.
his framing correctly. I don't feel like I'm on the spotlight anymore. Linda, how are you and the audience there? But yeah, so Jim was nice enough to join us tonight. He's gonna be taking some questions. We're just gonna be talking and shooting the stuff. And if you guys have any questions for Jim, please feel free to ask them. I found this pile of awesome comics that I had from, and it's just so funny because they're just random Marvel team-ups, which was my favorite series as a kid because you could just pick up any issue from beginning to end. It was a single story, so I love these. And his name is in every single one of these, and they span for like 5 years, which is pretty cool. So, and that's the great thing about Jim, and is that you can pretty much talk about anybody in the business, and he's been around so long that he's got some great stories about it. You guys missed the great volleyball story in the park.
Yeah, we already got a volleyball story.
Yeah,
with Sergio Aragonis.
Sergio Aragonis was talking to Ken, and then they basically just from that, Jim told us a wonderful story. Let's see. Well, somebody already wanted to talk about that Kirby piece behind you, and that's a great story into itself. Jim, if you wanted to talk about that one, I've heard that one, and that's awesome.
Yeah, well, this as you can see, it's huge. Back, I don't know if they still do it, but at San Diego Comic-Con years ago, it was a not-for-profit show, and so they needed to raise money for the next show. And so what they would do is they would invite various artists up on stage, like 6 at a time, with these huge boards to draw on. And they'd make a drawing and then auction it off. The convention would auction it off to raise money for the next show. A lot of people cooperated. Some really great people did some drawings for them. And in those days, in that ancient time, they would go for, $50 or, $30 or $80. It was, it wasn't huge money in those days. So Jack Kirby was on stage drawing that picture you see, and as each artist would finish, then they would bring their drawing to the auctioneer, and the auctioneer would sell it. So the first person to finish out of the group Jack was in was this fellow named Jack Katz. And Jack Katz, he did a self-published thing. I think it was called New Kingdom, something like that. And he, he was good. It was pretty good stuff. It was very elaborate. And so the artists were allowed to set a minimum bid, and Jack Katz set his minimum bid at $200, which was a lot in those days.
Oh yeah.
And so, for a moment there's crickets, and then somebody said 200 and they took it. I don't know if it was one of his relatives or not, but he did sell the picture for 200. Okay, so Jack finishes Captain America, and he comes up and hands it to the auctioneer. And this is at the nadir of Jack's career. This is when his books weren't selling, he's getting savage in the fanzines, and it just, everybody thought he was like, old-fashioned, and they didn't like him anymore or whatever. So the auctioneer was one of those people, and he holds the thing up, and he says, "Anybody give me $5 for this?" $5.
For a Jack Kirby.
Yes.
That size.
So I wasn't going to let Jack Kirby's piece go for less than Jack Katz's. And so I wasn't rich in those days, but I had a credit card. And so I bid 200. And the murmur goes through the crowd. Hey, the editor-in-chief of Marvel thinks that's worth something, you know? And so all of a sudden, people start bidding. And I would have beat any bid. I had a credit card. I would have beat any bid. But the auctioneer, this idiot auctioneer, he says, no, Jim wants it. And no more bids. You know, let him bid, you know. But so I P.S. As soon as he said $5, Jack walked off the stage and he walked out. And I got it. And so I went out and I saw Jack in the hall. And I went over and I gave it to him. I said, Jack, I rescued this from the Philistines, right? And I said, it's going to be worth a lot of money, Jack. I said, this is a great piece. It's tremendous. And I think you should keep it, you know? And so he walks away with it a few steps. Then he turns around and comes back and gives it to me. And he said, no, I want you to have this. And he was already signed. He signed it again to Jim, a good friend.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, this thing, I've had people say, you know what that's worth? And I said, yeah, it's priceless to me.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's amazing. See, and every single person who's still alive, who's in that room, should be kicking themselves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, they probably, if there had been even a reasonable bid, but I don't think I would have let it go for less than Jack Katz got. That just wouldn't be right.
No. So somebody asked how big it is. I'm just going to tell you guys, it's big.
It's huge. It's huge. It's framed under that museum glass stuff. And I had it for years, and I didn't have any place to put it, and so I had it wrapped and it was in my storage space. But I moved 7 times, right. And it got a little ding on the edge, and there was a couple smudges on it. So when I took it to have it framed, when I knew we were going to put it on this wall, got room for it. Here we go. I took it to the framer, expert guy, does a lot of artwork restoration. And I told him, I said, you can clean up any like fingerprints or smudges, and you can deal with this little dent in the side. I said, but do not erase any pencil marks. I want the master's marks there.
Yeah.
Excellent job. He did a wonderful job. This thing's heavy too. It's big. It's covered with glass. That's amazing. But don't worry, it's on that wall very sturdily.
Oh yeah, no, that's like, hey, that's why I have owned a few Kirbys in my day. I currently don't own any, and that piece is, I'm never gonna own a piece as beautiful as that.
It's special.
And the stories, the story's worth even way more than the piece, and that's
and the inscription and just everything about it is just wonderful.
Yeah. Anyway, it's one of my prized possessions.
Facebook user asks, ask him the story you told me once about the Spider-Man balloon in the parade.
That's Mark Strong. Mark Strong is Facebook user. Mark, you know better. Give your name to let Facebook see who you are. Give stream.
Yeah, how are they going to spy on you if you don't let them know who you are?
Exactly. So Jim, that sounds like a great story. Was it a Thanksgiving Day parade, or was it?
Thanksgiving Day parade. What happened was at the beginning of near the beginning of 1987 is when Marvel was sold, and I had trouble with the old owners. I had more trouble with the new owners. I didn't like these people, and so I made them fire me. I forced them to fire me so I'd get my severance pay, And so, but the thing is, I always tell people I worked through 1987 because I did. They sent me on a promotional tour to England. They sent me to the World Science Fiction Convention to represent Marvel. They fired me, but I'm out there representing Marvel. I did, among the many things I consulted on a number of things, but among the many things I consulted on was they wanted a balloon and a float for the Macy's parade, and so they decided the float should be Spider-Man, and the floats are all sculpted in clay. I mean, the balloons are all sculpted in clay at a place in, I think it's Jersey City. And so Joe Calamari calls me up from Marvel, and he says, we're having trouble with this thing. He says, you're really good at this 3-dimensional stuff, toys and things. And what can you help us on this? And I said, sure. Okay. So anyway, as we're driving out to Jersey City, he's explaining that he brought John Romita in, and John wasn't any help. He said, I think he can only do two-dimensional stuff. I said, John can do anything. I mean, John's a superb artist. So anyway, you get to the place, and I'm introduced to this sculptor, okay, and he's ego big as Montana, and he has sculpted Spider-Man with like Casper the Ghost proportions, and he's all bunched up, and it looks like he's taking a really difficult poop, you know, and it just looked silly as hell. And as I'm talking to the guy, I can see why John couldn't make any progress with him, because A, John is the nicest and sweetest guy in the world. B, John has tremendous respect for other artists, and this guy was not only an artist, he was an expert in the balloon field. And so the guy was telling him, "Oh no, you can't, change this because we have to mask the gas cells. This thing has to fly." And he feeding him, and John's not going to argue him. He's okay. So they bring in the bad cop, okay, and so I'm looking at this, and I'm like, "Holy cow!" So I said, "All right, look, this has all got to change." I said, first of all, he needs adult proportions. He's a muscular young man. Second, he's crawling. I said, this arm forward, this leg back, this leg arm back, this leg forward. I said, and he should look like he's being stealthy. And I said that head is way too big, and so you got to make all these adjustments. And the guy says, "I'd have to cut the frame." And I said, "There's a frame?" No, I didn't say it out loud, said to myself. Anyway, so I said, "Well, you'll have to cut the frame then," like as if I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And then he's arguing with me. He doesn't want to do it. He's like, "You don't understand the technology. You don't know." And so I look over, and in this other side of the room, there's this sculpture for the McDonald's balloon. And it's Ronald McDonald doing a one-hand handstand. And so I looked over there and I pointed and I said, "If you can do that, you can do this." And he's furious at me, but we're the client, and I'm telling him, this is what you do. I'll get you reference. You can't do these proportions. And he didn't like me anymore. But anyway, so it took a couple trips, but we got it to the point where it kind of looked like Spider-Man, and it was still able to fly. And so at the end, I said, "Now we need John Romita back." I told this guy, "Don't even try the webs. Forget it. Right. Don't do that. John will draw them on." And so John came and drew the webs on, And then once they finished this sculpture and they got all the details right, what they do is they send it to Akron, Ohio, the sculpture to Akron, Ohio, where the balloon is made. And then it's shipped back. And they bring them in on trucks, flatbed trucks, the night before Thanksgiving, and they inflate them under nets on 81st Street. And there's become like a block party now. It's like everybody goes to watch the balloons get blown up, and there's vendors and they're selling stuff. They're even selling alcohol, which they're not supposed to. The cops don't care. It's a little crowded now. It was easier when I went there, but it's a little crowded now, but it's fun.
Did you get to hold the Spider-Man balloon ropes?
Well, they offered that to me. And at first I accepted. They call them balloon wranglers, or what they're called. And then I found out that almost all the balloon wranglers are Macy employees. And so I'd be taking somebody's spot who waited all year to do that.
Right.
And I said, "You know what? I'll just watch the parade." The float, I designed that too. There was a float that year, 2 years, I think. And it was, what I did was a cross section of the city. So you could see down into the sewers and subway tunnels, but you could also see the Empire State Building, the Fantastic Four building, Doctor Strange's house, and some other things. And they just populated it with Marvel characters, actors as Marvel characters. Silver Surfer was up on top of the Empire State Building. The lizards crawling around in the sewers. Dr. Doom has a secret laboratory underground. All this stuff. And that the thing I had to ask them, their engineers, about, I said, "Look, what I'd like to do is have in the front, have a building that the Hulk could start to push over, and then he lets it go and it comes back."
Right.
And they said, yeah, we can do that. And they did. And it came out fine. And Marvel was so pleased with this float. Not only did they hire the actors to be on the float, they had all kinds of other characters walking alongside the float. And it was a big hit. It was a tremendous hit that year. But I think that it was too expensive to keep those two things going. So they just settled for the balloon.
There's footage of some
I think
of
it's
those.
2-year contracts for those floats and balloons, I believe.
Right.
Anyway.
I think there's some video floating around YouTube of the floats and all the kind of actor interactions they had on it.
Well, I know there's at least one picture of the float that I found online. It's a really good picture of the float. So if you just look up, Macy's Parade, 1987,
Spider-Man, right?
float. Yeah, you'll find it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that balloon rope question came from Andrew Rosenberg, who said to say hi. He's the toaster guy.
Oh yes, I drew him a toaster.
I've seen that toaster. It's
yes,
amazing.
that was the toaster you had when you were growing up, correct? That was like
well, it was my grandmother's toaster. She bought it in 1922, and it was you'd fold it down, you put the bread in, and then you close it up. And then when one side was toasted, you fold it down, you turn the bread over, and it close it up, and it toasts the other side. But the guy asked me to do a toaster, and I'm looking at this my toaster, and it's kind of featureless. It's just kind of a lump. And he didn't say I could get creative with it. He said, "I want a toaster." That's what he said. Okay, it's a toaster. So I thought, well, let's make it an interesting toaster. And so I found a picture of my grandma's toaster, 1922 Westinghouse toaster. And so I did it the best I could, and he liked it. Then when I ran into him at a convention one time, he had a sketchbook with all of his toasters in it, and I thought, wow, well, you tell me I could play with this, because Walt Simonson's is part dinosaur, and other guys are making them into robots, and it's a very fun book. It really is. If you ever see this gentleman, A, give him my regards, and B, look at his book. It'll crack you.
Nice.
Emilio Savina asks, "Hey Jim, when you did draw, what were an example of some of the stuff you didn't like to draw back in the day?"
I didn't like to draw at all. I was the artist of last resort. I was, if there was anybody else, but sometimes, believe it or not, we couldn't find an artist for something at Marvel, and I would not let it be late. And so I said, well, I can't draw like these other guys, but I can lay it out, and then I'll try to get a really good inker to patch it up, And so I did one. I think it was a Spectacular Spider-Man. I'm not sure, something like that. It was a Spider-Man story, and Jim Mooney inked it. Well, it looked pretty good,
Yeah, okay.
And I did some other ones. Some came out okay. Some, they just barely made the cut. But I didn't really want to draw. I find drawing difficult, and I've done a lot of drawings lately because my people who represent me, they found out I drew a little bit, and then they just kind of insisted so they could get their cut. Yeah, I have my book here. If you want to see it, I could hold it up.
Yeah, I was just listen. Don't let Jim fool you. He likes to draw now. It's not draw. He's drawing for the fans now. He's not drawing for the deadline anymore. So it's a little more fun. I
like drawing. I do like drawing. It's just that it's not as easy for me. You sit there and watch Mike Zeck, and he's like da 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 da. That's done. And me, like hours later, I'm still trying to get everything right. And I get I have to get reference on everything. I mean, the costumes and things, and stuff. So I enjoy it. Those are fun days, but it's harder for me. And if you want me to, the book's right over there. I can bring it over or not.
Sure.
Yeah. If you want to grab it and flip through it, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah. And we see we got quite a few questions in the chat, guys. We're going to try.
I will get to as many of them as I can, and I have marked my spot so that we can get them in order. And I saw Dale of Suspense popped in. Hey, Dale. It's a friend of mine.
Dale Suspense.
Yeah, that's the name of his YouTube channel. Wonderful YouTube channel. He
Let's see
has
what's
stuff
here.
with
See
his
if I
with
can-
his
like
kids.
this is a Green Goblin I did. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, that's
no, that's wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's based on a John Romita pose because he had the Goblin in a similar pose, but he had the pumpkin in the forward hand, like he's showing you his pumpkin. I'm like,
right.
no, I'd have it back here, ready to throw, you know. And then also I used Alex Ross did a head-on shot of the Goblin, a painting, beautiful, and but I liked that look, but I wanted to turn the head. See, so that's not tracing him or anything. I had to draw that.
And now
just took a
people
little
are trying to
inspiration.
claim it. This is not a sales show. This is not a sales show.
No, I'm not selling anything. These are just photocopies. Yeah, and like a lot of people like Venom, you know. So I did Venom.
Look at that, people.
Yeah, it's you know, it's that's fun because it's harder to screw that up. But so I'll show you one or two more.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, if Jim, you know, when Jim takes suggestions for sketches, as long as he can find some reference, he's happy to draw anything. And he's you know, he comes up with some really cool stuff. We've done a few sketch ops with him, and he's done a few sketches at shows, and they always turn out wonderful. I haven't seen anybody who hasn't been just ecstatic about what they got.
I got a sketch. I started a project in your first sale with Jim, and I got a black suit Spider-Man, and I made this project with it. These are all former editor-in-chiefs of Marvel.
Oh, it's groovy.
See,
and current CB Sobalski right here just got added this summer.
That's great.
I have Roy Thomas and Joe Quesada and yourself.
Yeah. This is somebody wanted Titania. And
wow.
I had her punching the She-Hulk. You know, she's the star of the picture, so I figured she'd be winning at that time. You know, I don't know. I do whatever they want. Sometimes they want cheesecake. Okay.
Hey.
You know,
cheesecake sells.
No, I mean, I can understand. I mean, one guy has had a big collection of Sally Forth, right? The Wally Wood character, and she you know, she would routinely lose part of her clothes in each strip, and so he actually had one drawn by Woody, and a bunch of other really fine artists. He asked me to draw one. I'm like, okay, I'll try. So I did, and I'm not going to show you that
one. Our next question is from Facebook user again. He said that you had another story about a dinner with Stan Lee, but you forgot the details. To be honest, I remember laughing very hard though.
I wonder if that's when didn't you introduce Stan to somebody who was a mobster at some point?
Oh, that's a Vince Coletta.
That's a Vince Coletta story.
That's a Vince Coletta story. Yeah.
I had an awful lot of dinners with Stan. I don't remember one that was particularly funny, but there's probably is one in there somewhere. Stan was he was great. He always liked to go out to lunch. When we got to lunch, he liked to go out with me because I'm 6'7", and back then my legs worked. And so Stan would always like full speed everywhere, striding, you know, it's like race walking, you know. And I was the only guy to keep up with him, you know. And so he said, I like going to lunch with you. You can keep up with me. I said, yeah, you know, it's hard, but okay. He was something. I mean, I'll tell you what, he had just no patience. He didn't like to wait. When he got to work at the 575 office, Marvel was on. Well, the executive floor was the 9th floor. The comics floor was the 6th floor of this building. And if the elevator wasn't right there, he'd run up the stairs every day, 9 floors to his office. And then there, I don't know if you know, there was a blackout and there were riots in New York. And that's when everybody started having fire escape stairwell doors that you could go out, but you couldn't come in. So the first day, Stan runs up the stairs and he can't get in the door. It's a little peeved, but and then he had to wait for the elevator, and that really, was annoying.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Our next question: I'd like to hear the story of Tony Isabella trying to use Jesus as a character in Ghost Rider. This is from Jim Manley.
Yeah, I've never actually heard Tony's side of it. but I'll tell you what really happened, and you can decide who you want to believe. What happened was I was brand new, what they called associate editor. I was the editor who actually was hands on with the books. My boss was the editor in chief, and at that time it was Marv Wolfman, and he wasn't sitting there editing comics every day. He did editor in chief stuff to do. So anyway, this book comes across my desk to edit, and at that point, I think it was penciled and scripted and possibly even lettered, because they used to come in finished sometimes. We fixed that, but all right. So here's this book, and it's complete. All the art is there, and the lettering. So I'm reading, and I thought, what? Wait a minute. So I went back and I read some back issues, because this was the end of a long running storyline. And the back issues, pretty much each issue, a Ghost Rider would be in some terrible trouble, and this guy who looked like the Jesus in that famous thing everybody has, he looked like Jesus, right? Or what passes for Jesus, and every time he'd sort of magically rescue Ghost Rider, and Ghost Rider would say, "Who are you?" And he'd say, "A friend," and then and then he'd vanish. So, all right, this is the culmination of that storyline. And what happens is it turns out that it really is Jesus. Okay. And he once again comes down and defeats Satan and saves the Ghost Rider. And then Ghost Rider is granted by God his Ghost Rider powers, so he can keep being the Ghost Rider, by divine intervention. And this is not subtle. This is bald-faced, in your face, leaving no doubt. This is the real Jesus. So I'm thinking, well, that kind of makes Marvel a Christian universe, right? I mean, well, what if there are Jewish kids who read comics, or
right.
Muslims, or I mean, that's not right. I mean, I was taught better than that at DC. I once had a guy whose last name, I don't know what it reminded the editor of some sickness or disease, and he said, "You got to change that name." Oh, I know. There was a Zodiac group one time, another book, and they wouldn't let me use cancer. I could not. I had Zodiac villains, but I couldn't use cancer. I had to call them something else. So anyway, that they didn't want to have anything that was offensive or sensitive or made the universe Christian or anything. So I called Tony and I said, Tony, a writer can't just arbitrarily decide in an issue of Ghost Rider to declare that the Marvel universe is Christian. God is real, Jesus is real, nobody else is. And he argues with me. I guess he was born again or something at that time, and he wanted this really badly. And I kept saying, Tony, it's not proper professional publishing. Stan would tell you this. Anybody would tell you this. But he wouldn't listen. And so I said, Tony, if you're not going to fix it, I'll fix it. And he hangs up the phone, and I went to Marv and I said, this is what he said. What do you want me to do? You're the boss. And he said, we can't have that. And I said, yeah, that's what I thought. So anyway, I fixed it. I had a couple of pages redrawn. I did layouts for them. I even still have the layouts. And Frank Robbins drew the hell out of it. And what I did was I changed the ending of the story. So all of the stuff leading up to this was a deceit perpetrated by Mephisto. And in the end, it's Ghost Rider himself who defeats Mephisto. No divine intervention. And he keeps his powers because he's still the spirit of vengeance. And, it's like I thought it was a good ending for the story. I know that Tony does not agree,
right?
to say it mildly, but and I don't know how he tells it, but that's what happened, and I would do it again 1,000 times. And years later, I asked Stan. He said, "Are you kidding me? No, you don't do that." That was later, though. It wasn't at the time. Stan wasn't around at that moment.
Right.
And that's one thing I've always really enjoyed about your time at Marvel. You were such a protector and steward of these characters that are
That
at
was my
least very
job.
important to me.
That was part of my job, to protect those franchises, and not let this anarchy go on where people are doing things that might not be appropriate for the characters or detrimental to the value of the character. And that's just part of the job. And I'd been well trained by DC people, Mort Weisinger and others, and so I thought I knew what to do, and I did the best I could.
And you can sure tell when your time at Marvel was coming to an end, because some of the comics got really weird. I remember as a kid, and a friend of mine and I are working on a project where we're detailing the West Coast Avengers and that whole business with Mockingbird in the past with Phantom Rider. I can't imagine you would have signed off on that.
Probably not. Toward the end there, the last year or so, when they were trying to sell the company, and I was Marvel's owned by 6 people. They own Cadence Industries, which owned Marvel. They would taken it off the stock market, what they call take it private. And so these 6 guys owned Cadence, which owned Marvel. And in the last 2 years I was there, they decided to sell it, cash in, because we were doing tremendously well. And now when greedy people try to sell a company, they're not interested in investing anymore. And they're always trying to find ways to slice costs and drop more money to the bottom line, because a company like Marvel is sold for a multiple of its earnings. So whatever's on the bottom line, they might get 25 times that or 30 times that or whatever. And so every time you save $1, you might get $30 back. All right. So what they started doing was things like they cashed out our pension plan. They eviscerated our health insurance. They made it into a crummy HMO that you had to pay for, and they took away our 401k matching. And then they took away the 401k. They just destroyed us. They took away some of the programs that I had installed to benefit the artists. Like they were trying to retroactively stop the royalty program. I mean, royalties, because it takes a while for all the sales to clear. You pay the royalties, the final sale number like about 8 months out from when the book is on the stands. So about 8 months out, you got a pretty solid sales number. So the royalty checks would come like in the 9th month after your book was published. Pretty much no way to get around that, because you don't know what the final sale is. So they just wanted to cut it off today. That means that people who had been making comics for the last 9 months, thinking they were going to get a royalty, weren't going to get one. Oh man, I got a screaming argument with these guys. I threatened to quit. I'm going to go get a lawyer. We're going to have a class action suit. We're going to sue your asses. And I'm having this giant argument with the president of the company, the executive vice president, and the financial officer in the intersection between their offices. And there also nearby was the company counsel. And so we're shouting at each other, and company counsel walks out his door, walks over to where we are, stands in front of the 3 people I'm arguing with, and he says, "Gentlemen, he's right." And he goes back to his office, and so they shut up for a minute, and I escaped. But I mean, that's what I'm up against, I mean, they just were. I discovered that they had just simply decided they weren't going to pay international royalties anymore. I remember Walt Simonson asked me, he said, "How come here's a volume of Star Slammer, the graphic novel. Star Slammer is the graphic novel in French." He said, "I never got a check. What's going on here?" I said, "I'll look into it." Went upstairs, and I found out that from the financial officer that they decided to just stop paying. And if somebody, brought their lawyer, well, maybe they'd make some settlement or something. I said, "Great. If I go down and tell Walt, hey, Walt, go get your lawyer," he quits and goes to DC. And then it's Jim Shooter's driving talent away. Right. How about that? You can't win. So I kept telling him, I'm fighting it. I'm trying to fix it. I'm on the case. I'm doing what I can. And these evil people were just screwing us, selling us down the river. And so that was amazingly ugly. anyway, I can't remember what the question was, but
on to the next question from Facebook user, very popular one tonight. Jim, how big of a thrill was it for you as a teenager to see your Legion stories drawn by Kurt?
oh man, I'll tell you, I actually the very first one published was drawn by Sheldon Moldoff, and did a good job. But I didn't realize what an honor that was at the time. I didn't know who Shelley Moldoff was, and when I found out he was like one of the real stars of the golden age, you know, I'd done Batman and other things. I thought, wow, I mean, this golden age guy drew my first published book. The second one was Kurt Swan, and a lot of them thereafter, the Supermans, the Legion of Superheroes, a lot of them were by Kurt. He was the nicest gentleman in the world. I'll tell you what, I was thrilled. I thought the art was beautiful. He told the story perfectly clearly. I did little layouts for every panel of every page, and he followed them, except he would make them better, which thank God. But you know, he followed them, and then because I was doing the layouts, he would write me these letters. They're like this big, and they're on vellum, and all hand lettered. And what they were, in the most gentlemanly and nice way, he was giving me little drawing tips, little pieces of advice, and he always draw a little funny cartoon at the bottom to make me laugh, you know, and sign it Kurt. So I have one of those in my show and tell that I take to conventions. Anyway, I mean, he couldn't have been better to me. All the old pros were great to me. They were trying to help the kid, you know, and I had a wonderful relationship with them. And I'll tell you, I listened to every word they ever said. I worked with Wally Wood, you know, of course, Kurt, Gil Kane, you know, just some great guys, and learn from them. Neil Adams' first job, I understand, at DC Comics was drawing covers from my sketches. I did the cover sketch, he did the cover, and of course, he made it much better. Yeah, I mean, it was fantastic, and he liked my my designs too. I mean, years later, 2005 or something like that, I was back doing the Legion again. That didn't work out too well. But Neil heard that I was writing the Legion again, and so he called Mike Martz, who was the editor. Neil, he called Mike Martz, and he said, "I hear Jim's doing the Legion." He says, "I'd like to do a variant cover for you." And Martz says, "Sure, you know, great." He said, "One condition: Jim does the sketch." So I did, and he knocked that out of the park like he always does. Wow. Always did. Anyway.
Yeah.
And
it was great, bro. Great.
And anybody that's in the chat, I see people popping in and saying hello. If you have a question for Jim Shooter, please put it in the chat, and we'll read it to him. And he's been working his way through these. We're almost completely caught up.
I know, and I said this is where I'm going to show you guys what I mean. I've got a handful of books here. I'm literally just going to grab one out.
Yeah, let's do one.
And I'm just going to tell you guys that it's the editor-in-chief. It's Jim Shooter right there.
All right.
And let's see. Can you tell me a story about, let's see, how about Mike Esposito? Do you have a good Mike Esposito?
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
Mike
Esposito.
I'm not sure it's a fun story, but I mean, Mike, when I first came into comics in the 60s, it was page rate only. You got paid so much per page, and I'm talking about printed page, so much per page, and that's all you got. No rights, no benefits, nothing. And the page rates, it seemed good to me because it was better than working at the dry cleaner down the street. But you know, I was getting $14 a page at the end. The first books I wrote, I got $4 a page. You know, and then Edmund Hamilton, the story goes, this was told to me by E. Nelson Bridwell, who was in the room. He said that Edmund Hamilton somehow found out what they were paying me when I was brand new. And he went into Morton and was yelling at him and saying, "It's bad enough they're using child labor. Do you have to screw the kid?" You know. And so mysteriously, after just a couple months, all of a sudden my rate is $8. I didn't ask for a raise, and I didn't know I could get one. And before long, it's 14, which is, you know, about what, you know, the older writers got more than that. But I was, 14 seemed fine to me. All right. Well, years later, those rates hadn't gone up much. Okay. At Marvel, I started at 65. Marvel in 1978, there were still guys getting $15 a page to write. And I had one artist, he was getting $35 for a penciled and inked page. $35. It's hard to make a living that way. So all right. Well, some guys, sorry, they figured, all right, I got to make money. I'm just going to do it as fast as I can, right? And then some guys like who were always reliable and very professional, they would be the go-to guys for the production manager, because the editor-in-chief, whose job it was to do this, he left it to the production manager to, find inkers and stuff. And I don't know why. I guess it was just too hard. They figured he could do it. I don't know. But anyway, and a lot of times they get Vince Coletta to do this, because Vince was very fast and he was very good. And John Verporten, the production manager, would call him in and he'd say, Vince, ink on paper, 3 days. So he had 3 days to crank out like 20 some pages. And he would. And he'd get it done. And maybe it wasn't the greatest art ever, but I'll tell you, Vince in 3 days could do better than most people could do in 2 weeks. So, and he was just working for the man he worked for. He was working for John Verporten, the production manager. And John was desperate because everything was so late. Another guy who did that was Mike Esposito. He would be able to like pretty much churn stuff out fast, but he wasn't anywhere near as good as Vince. And he also, in my opinion, deliberately, he figured it's late. They have to take whatever I give them. So, one time, and he didn't, pour his heart into it exactly. One time, John Verporten, the production manager, I'm sitting at my little editor desk and trying to work on these books. And John comes in and he says, you draw, don't you? And I said, not good. And he said, can you use a brush? I said, yeah, I went to art school. I got decent, hands. I said, I guess so. And he said, Mike Esposito just delivered this. And I look at it and it's outlined only. There's no rendering. There's no shadows. There's just outlined. It's a coloring book. And it was an issue of Team Up. And I said, oh my God. And he said, what I need, he says, there's nobody available. He said, what I need is for somebody to stay up all night and put shadows and rendering and stuff, add touches to try to make it look, vaguely professional.
Right.
And I said, all right. So I went home that night and I had got a brush somewhere and ink and I inked all night, trying to put drop shadows and and a little bit of rendering on it and doing things like blacking in the eye cutouts of Spider-Man. How it has black around the edges. Well, Mike just had an outline, and I killed myself trying to get this thing done. I brought it in. I showed it to John, and he said I can't pay you, and I said I don't care, because he'd already paid Mike, and he had no way to pay me, and he was trying to figure it out, but he couldn't do it, and so and that lowered my opinion of Mike Esposito a little. Other than that, he was the nicest guy. He was, friendly, always, really happy to get a rush job because then he could hack. And I remember when I introduced the royalty plan. I remember Mike coming in. He was working on one of the Spider-Man books and figured out what his royalty checks would be every month, and they would be very big. And he comes in thanking me. He says, great. I said, Mike, that's your death warrant, because, sooner or later it's going to sort out, people who are going to want the X-Men, because it will pay higher royalties than Ghost Rider,
Right.
And so it'll settle out. And I think unless you really start doing things as well as you can, and I know you can do it well. I know you can. I said, but it's now, it's no longer volume, it's quality, and you better tighten the screws. And so I scared him a little bit. You know what? He actually did some nice work for Tom DeFalco after that. And guess what? He didn't end up losing any income. He was getting paid royalties. So, better to do one book well and get, your $20,000 royalty check at the end of the month than to do, 6 books at the speed of light and then just get your page rate.
Yeah, no. That's like I said. I just grabbed a random book, and I even picked the inker. I was just trying to prove a point that you can go through any of these books, and
the old guys. I don't know the new guys as well, but the old guys, yes.
And I think I stalled long enough for now. We have
we have a lot of questions built up in the pipeline. Emilio Savina had asked earlier, when you were at DC, did Ramona Fradon ever draw any of your stuff?
No, but I know where to see her. I didn't really know her. Yeah.
Jason Harris says, it seems like I read all of the letters to the editor from the comics I collected in the 80s when Jim was in charge. Did you pen any of those responses? It's the question.
I guess he wants to know if you were actually the one who answered the letters to the editor.
A few times, but mostly what would happen is that the editor of each book, he would actually hire somebody to go through the letters, to select the letters. Editor would approve his selection, and then if the guy was pretty good, he might be allowed to write the replies, or the editor would himself. And a few times I did, because somebody asked a question that was a Jim question, and so but that wasn't very often. And doing the letter column, it only paid like $100 or something. It usually didn't take that long. And $100 was a lot of money back then in ancient days.
Facebook user Jim, Secret Wars was my first Marvel comic when I was a kid. I've read that you told your writers every comic is someone's first, and you did a great job with Secret Wars. It compelled me to start reading Marvel. I just bought the new Secret Wars omnibus. In fact, fond memories.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for saying that. And yes, I did try to, tell people, clarity was important. Introduce the characters. I mean, if you go to a movie, pretty quickly you find out who Indiana Jones is. I mean, like you start out with him recovering an artifact. Stan did it effortlessly all the time. You just somehow in the first few pages you got the drift who these guys are. And where a lot of people these days, I mean, I was reading a comic book by the guy who was supposed to be DC Comics best writer, and I couldn't even tell which ones were heroes and which ones were villains. They're all calling each other by their civilian names. I'm like, okay, Bruce, I'm comic savvy. I know who that is. Cal, guess, all right. But they kept making reference to the Carters, and I was like, Carters. Who are the Carters?
Yeah, Hawkman.
Hawkman and Hawkwoman, I guess they call her now. But yeah, so about halfway through this, I finally figured that out, and I realized I've been worrying about that and not paying much attention. Not that you could read the story anyway. I mean, it's all very glib and everything, and everybody, uses everybody's first name, and it seems like, well, wouldn't they? Well, yeah, but somewhere in there. Oh, one time, Claremont is funny. I mean, he's great. I wrote his introduction to the Hall of Fame. I compared him to Babe Ruth. He didn't create the X-Men, but he built the house, right? So anyway, but Chris was so fussy. He wanted every word to be his. When I was editing his scripts as an editor, before I became editor-in-chief, he'd tell me, he said, don't make any marks on it. He said, or if you do, make a real light pencil X in the margin, and I'll come in and if it needs to be fixed, I'll fix it. And he said, don't you fix it. I said, okay. I like that. Hey, it's saving me work. So Chris would, and I also thought, well, who else is like that? Me and Archie. And like some really great guys. They want their words. They don't want your words. So anyway, he'd come in and he's going through a script and he finds an X and he says, well, what's this? And I say, well, it might be nice to mention the character's name somewhere, and he's like, and he runs and he finds a typewriter. He retypes the whole page. because he wanted the scripts to be clean, no marks, just like as if he'd never made a mistake. And but a silly thing like that retypes the whole page, and then all right, well, whatever. But I mean, it's admirable in a way. It really is. Not in a way, it's admirable. But it was funny watching him run around try to find a typewriter.
Jim Manley asks, hoping to see Jim in Chicago. Any plans for a convention appearance out here?
I think I'm doing Fan Expo in Chicago. I think, yeah, that's later this year sometime. Yes, I'm pretty sure I am. You can ask Ken. I think Ken knows the Fan Expo people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to remember the dates on.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, because I know we won't be doing C2E2 this year, but
yeah, I've done that. It's nice, but
can't do them all.
You can't do them.
No.
Facebook user, hi Jim. I know that you were good friends with Steve Ditko. Can you discuss how Ditko came to work on ROM and also the work Ditko did with you at Valiant? Thank you.
Valiant, yeah. When I first met Steve Ditko, it was at Neil Adams' studio. He had a big studio, and a lot of times after work, guys would go over there and hang out. A lot of Marvel and DC artists actually rented studio space from Neil. They rent a room. Jack Abel, for instance, shared a room with Howard Chaykin. And, so there's a bunch of them who would work over there. So it was a good place to go over after work and hang out with your friends. So one time I was over there and I look over and I think that's Steve Ditko. And somebody says, oh, yeah, that's him. He comes here sometimes. So I walk over and introduced myself and told him what a big fan of his I was. And I told him, I said, look, Steve, I said, if you ever need work, I said, our door's always open. And, and he says, I hate Marvel. I said, well, I understand that. I said, and in some ways I don't blame you. I mean, it was just not right how you were treated. I said, but everything's different now. I said, we have royalties, we have benefits, we have good healthcare, we have very good healthcare. And I said, and from a certain date, every time you create a character, you own 20% of the adjusted gross forever. And so, I don't want to work there. I said, all right, fine. I'm just letting you know, doors open. I said, if you need work, call me. If you need anything, call me. Right. And so, I gave him my card. And I ran into him a few other times. And I never pressed it. I didn't want to harass the guy, but I'd always say, doors open, something like that. So one day, the receptionist calls, my secretary puts her through. She says, there's a Steve Ditko here. Do you want to talk to this guy? And I said, yes, I want to talk to Steve Ditko. So I came running out to the reception area, and there he is. And I brought him back down the hall to my office. And he sits across the desk with me, and I said, what can I do for you? He said, I just in the neighborhood. I thought I'd stop by. Okay, so we start chatting about nothing, and I didn't bring up work at all because I wasn't going to press him. He knew by that time. He surely knew the door was open. So we talked about I don't know what for 15 or 20 minutes, and he says, "Well, I have to go." And I said, "Okay, anytime, Steve. Stop by anytime." So he goes, and I went out and told the receptionist. I said, "Listen, that's Steve Ditko," and I told her exactly who he was. And I said, "You treat him like royalty, okay?" And so. She, oh, okay, all right. So about a week later, turns up again, and the receptionist, oh, come right in, Mr. Ditko, and she calls all the editors. There's like 14 editors, and she calls every editorial office. She says, Ditko's in the house. Click, Ditko's in the house. And so I'm sitting there talking to Steve again about nothing, and all of a sudden this flood of people will come into my room. My door was always open. Everybody just walked in, and so all these people come in to see Steve. They want to meet him and shake his hand and show him pictures, get his autograph, whatever. I don't know. But so he's just basking in adulation, and that was nice. And then finally he says, oh, guys, I got to go. And so he leaves. And a lot of people said, is he going to work for us? I said, I didn't even ask him. I don't know, And so the third week he comes back, receptionist treats him like royalty. He comes in and he sits down in my office and he says, if you have anything interesting, I'll consider it. I said, sit there for a minute. I ran down the hall and I found we had a Captain America plot that was unassigned. And so I ran back and I said, "How's Captain America?" And he said, "Oh, I like Captain America." And I said, "Okay, well, this is a plot for issue such and such. You know, it's a long deadline." I said, "But, you know, the sooner you do it, the better, you know, we'll be able, the more inkers we'll have to pick from. And, you know, you can help." And so he did. And he did an excellent job. And it was fine. And after that, I made sure if he wanted work, he didn't want to be grinding it out. He didn't want a monthly book. He didn't want, you know, too much work. But he, you know, he enjoyed working. And I guess money was nice, and we paid him very well. And of course, he had the benefits and everything. And so we found stuff that he liked, and so he did Machine Man, the Captain Universe limited series, ROM, something else. I can't remember. He didn't want to work on Spider-Man. It just upset his stomach or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, but he did. We kept him busy as much as he wanted, you know. And then when I left there, they cut him loose. He's a founding father, you fool. You don't cut him loose. You know, what's wrong with you? And so he showed up at Valiant, and he needed work. And Steve was funny. He didn't want conflicted heroes. He wanted good guys and bad guys. And so at that moment, I was publishing wrestling comics, heels and faces, right? He was happy to do that, and he did a bunch of it for us. And he did a great job. And then we had some good inkers, and it came out really nice. Followed me to Defiant, only worked for me a little there because he started getting offers, and they were reprinting a lot of his stuff. And they got the reprint money and everything. He even came to Broadway, and we were talking about things we could do. And I convinced him to let us do Mr. A. His first reaction was, "Nobody touches Mr. A." And I said, look, here's the deal. I said, we want one-time publication rights, one time only. All other rights remain with you. Once it's published, those rights revert to you. I said, find a lawyer that you trust, okay? And either he can draw up the contract or we can draw up the contract and he can vet it. I said, and I'll pay for your lawyer. And he said, "Oh, well, I don't know." You know. Then a week later he comes back and says, "Okay." So we were going to do that, and that's about the time that Broadway got sold to Golden Books, and everything went downhill from there. So it never happened.
Yeah, so some of those characters he worked in the late 80s, would that still have been under you, like Speedball and Squirrel Girl? Or
Speedball was like right after me, and DeFalco was. I thought that was a dumb idea, but yeah, I mean, basically they were. I don't know. I felt like they weren't treating him with respect, and not too long. I mean, I think the last thing he did was Chuck Norris's Karate Commandos, which is some one-shot thing. And then we don't even work for you. Goodbye. You know?
Yeah.
So that was bad. And the same thing happened to Valiant. After I left, he was doing some great work on Magnus. I convinced him Magnus is all good. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And so he was doing some great work on Magnus. Ralph Reese was inking it. Boy, it looked good. And then as soon as I left, they cut him loose. You know, that's
silly.
Founding father, man. You know, would you cut Jerry Siegel loose? You know, would you,
right.
God. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, all right. So, Jim, I know you're kind of on a tight schedule. It is 8:00 now. If you wanted to take one more question, that'd be great. If you got to get out of here,
I'll do one more. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm long-winded and it all. That means I'll be here till 9, probably.
Maybe a Bob Hall. Is that where you was that?
Paul, I'm going to go with that. But I am going to read a quick comment from somebody that just wanted to. It was a pleasure meeting Mr. Shooter a couple months back at the Long Island Comic Expo. Wish I had a question for him, but he handled a boatload of them during his panel, no matter how tough. So just somebody that had a great interaction with you. And then, Linda Craig asks, Bob Hall is our local comic pro. Any memories of working with Bob?
Oh, Bob was, I mean, Bob, he went to the Buscema school when there was a Buscema school, and he wanted to draw, but he was already, he taught theater. He actually taught at the University of Nebraska for a while, and he had written, he had written a play called, this is back when there was a sort of a vampire craze. He had written a play called The Passion of Dracula. and it played in the Cherry Lane Theater, which is the best and biggest of the off-Broadway theaters in New York. Played there for years. And it was going to be produced in Boston and in London. It was quite a successful play. It's very good. And so I was, when I just started out, because I had been the editor. Now I'm the editor-in-chief, but so there's a vacancy for editor. So I'm doing everything at once, and it's killing me. So I needed to hire editors. So I got Roger Stern, and I got Bob Hall. I think they were the first two, and then it kept adding. But Bob told me when he took the job, he says, I can only give you 6 months because I have to go to London. And I said, 6 months will save my life, you know? And so he did. He did excellent work. Mary Jo Duffy was his assistant. They did a great job. He did leave to go manage his plays. He came back, but then he just wanted to be an artist. So he worked with me on the Avengers, and he did a lot of other things, West Coast Avengers, all kinds of stuff. Did an excellent job. And P.S. He asked me to be on the board of his theater company. He had a small theater company in New York. It was called, are you ready for this, Shakespeare fans? The New Rude Mechanicals. So you know, Midsummer Night's Dream, you know, and so I was on the board, and I thought, oh, this is great. You know, being on the board means you get to go raise money. That's what being on the board means. But that was fine, and we did. And just a great guy. I see him sometimes at shows. We always have a good time.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to say, I know Ken is out there peripherally. He had some stuff going on.
Yeah.
So I was going to see if he wanted to come in and help us end the show tonight. But Jim, as always, man, it's such a pleasure. It was a pleasure seeing you in New Orleans. It's a pleasure seeing you again. And I can't wait till the next time we get to hang out.
Yeah. We had fun. That was good. All right.
You are free to go, my friend. I know you've got somebody. You can get out of here and
sorry, Legion of Comics, you were too late.
Yeah, and listen, well, there'll be plenty of opportunities to talk to Jim. I'm sure we'll have him on again. And there we go. There's
Ken.
I gotta go, Ken.
Thank you so much, Jim, for taking your time.
These guys know what they're doing.
Exactly why I let them steer.
All right. Good night, folks.
Yeah. Have a great night.
Thank
Jim.
you so much.
Again. Take care.
Bye, Jim.
So now if you guys want to interview Ken is here. I'm just kidding.
That was great. What a wonderful hour with Jim.
Yeah, it's always great to talk. Like I said, I
liked that idea.
Well, I said, and I wonder if this is the Marvel Team Up book that Jim, I didn't even get to ask him if this is the one that he did the finished inking in, because this is just the one I happened to grab. And I could have grabbed any book, and the writer and the penciler on here were bigger names, and I wanted to go with a lesser person just to show you that Jim can tell a story about anybody. And I'm so glad that I didn't get much chance to even delve into this stuff because you guys were so great in the crowd tonight. It was so much fun.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah. So somebody said Jason Harris reminded you to smash like, subscribe.
Yes, please.
And Jason Harris also says, any updates on anything?
Let's see.
I got some pretty promising David Williams art today.
That's going to make some people very, very happy. And also on a personal note, and if someone's out there and remembers or did, I don't know how this happened. This is completely my fault, but someone had purchased this wonderful sketch, and somehow it got stuck behind something, and I was moving stuff and I found it. This was supposed to be mailed out at least 6 weeks ago, and I completely apologize for still having this. And thank you so much for being so understanding, because you didn't mention it, but please send me a message, send 4C a message, because I have been trying to rack my brain to figure out whose this is. And if anybody remembers, or if it's yours, please contact us so I can get this to you. I will send it out the next day that I find out, or the day if I find out and I can get it out to you. I apologize. It's a wonderful sketch by the person who did all of the end credits for the She-Hulk show, and I want to get it to its rightful owner. So please, hopefully, if you're watching this later, if you're not here now, but once again, that's my bad. That's an update that I have that's just on me. I apologize. But Ken, you got some David Williams stuff?
I'm saying it looks like something that people have been asking about. So,
See Jason Harris. Hallelujah.
Emilio asked if Marcus has finished the stuff from last week yet. Marcos. Hey,
no, I don't think everything's done yet. No.
Okay. Right. And yeah, when we do those, guys, you got to remember he's got to finish all the stuff before he sends it out, especially the fact that he's in Italy. So it's going to be, right. And then we have to ship it over. So it's once again, that was just last week. We'll be happy to show you guys as soon as we get that stuff. As far as other updates go, as soon as we have them, guys, I'll give them to you. I don't have anything on my desk right now, but we're trying to at least get some answers if we can't get you guys the art. And we're definitely in the midst of getting a bunch of those answers for you.
We are.
But,
all right. Well, yeah. I'm gonna go eat dinner.
You go eat dinner, buddy. And Ken, unless you have anything else to add.
That's it, guys. Thank you so much.
Hey, wonderful. Another great show. Thank you guys for joining us for Tuesday night with 4C Comics, and be here next week. And we'll have another great show for you. Ken, is next week our Cartoon Society, or is it the week after?
It's at the end of the month, the 27th. Okay, it's Saturday.
So there you go. So now that's right. So next week's another surprise. So yeah, please join us next Tuesday night, guys. Yeah, Ken's always working on it. But we'll see you guys soon. And remember, guys, stick around. We got a great outro. And please, if you could join us on YouTube and like and subscribe, it really helps the algorithm. It helps us out. It helps us get more people and out to more people. And we love you guys. And thank you again. And thank you to Becker for joining us tonight. And thanks for Ken for running the show and being 4C and for everything he does for you and for me. So you guys have a great night. Thank you so much.